Celebrating 4 years of talk like you've never heard it before. This is GABNET, the Great American Broadcast Network.
Hi, everybody. This is Alex Bennett asking you the musical question. What are you doing every Tuesday through Friday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time? Well, that's when we're live with The Ramble. And The Ramble is a program of deep, thoughtful discussion, sometimes just wacky and goofy. It's always fun, it's always exciting, it's always stimulating. It's a lot of people just talking with each other. Yes, we call them a citizen panel. And we have like upwards to 9, 10 people. Sometimes we call it a full house, sometimes we call it a royal flush, and beyond that, just call it sheer madness. Anyway, I'd like you to join me each and every Tuesday through Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time until midnight for The Ramble. Right here on GABNET. Now more than ever, talk like you've never heard it before.
GABNET's creator and founder, Alex Bennett, is always looking for ways to stay on the cutting edge. He first revolutionized commercial radio. He built a career on being one of the first to speak to the new generation of the 60s. Then he reinvented himself on morning drive radio, where he was the first to use a live studio audience and guest comedians each morning. Another ratings winner. Next, Alex took off for outer space as he brought his unique perspective on politics and news to the satellites. Always a pioneer, his next stop was to create a unique format that no one else had ever done, with citizen panels on the internet. What's next? Is there any place left to innovate? Are there any stones left unturned? Introducing GABNET Live on Roku. That's right, GABNET Live on Roku. No lies, because you can't lie on the internet. GABNET is now available on your TV. You can listen to GABNET's 24/7 network stream, or browse your favorite GABNET shows from the archives, just like on GABNET.net. But that's not all. You can also watch video of Alex's archived live stream TV programs, as well as his televised Friday Night Ramble. It's all there for you, and all you have to do is turn on your Roku device, search the Roku store for GABNET Live, and add the channel to your lineup. Then sit back and enjoy. It's GABNET Live on Roku. Thanks, Alex.
Hi, everybody. This is Alex Bennett, and I've had a long and interesting trip. It's called life. And for years, people have demanded that I write a book about it, and while I've been a writer, my main talent has always been that of a broadcaster. Over a year ago, I decided not to write the book, but using my best skill, I decided to tell it. It's called Life in the Passing Lane, and I described it as an audio biography. It's presented in 30-minute chapters, so it's easy to binge listen. And you can access it on the GABNET page by clicking on Life in the Passing Lane and going to a page with every single episode, plus some extras. If you want to access it on your mobile device, that's easy too. It's on iTunes. It's Life in the Passing Lane, an audio biography by me. I'm Alex Bennett.
Celebrating 4 years of talk like you've never heard it before. This is GABNET, the Great American Broadcast Network.
Hey! This is Alex Bennett, and this is The Ramble, and we go until, midnight. But for the next 30 minutes, we've got something a little special here, and it is the first of 3 parts. About a year ago, less than a year ago, I became friends with a guy named Jack Garfein. And Jack Garfein, let me tell you, was a big light in the American theater. Working with the Actors Studio as a director, he gave James Dean his first job, was close confidant of Marilyn Monroe, knew both the Millers, Henry and What's the other Miller? Henry Miller. Henry Miller? Is it Henry Miller? Tropic of Capricorn. Well, anyway, but the guy just had a lot of stories to tell. But the most amazing story he had to tell was how his life started out. As at age 13, he found himself in Auschwitz. And I've wanted to interview Jack. I've kind of been reticent to, because he's a friend, and that's hard, and I didn't want to feel that in any way I was exploiting him. But on the other hand, it's a story that needs to be told, and a story you need to hear. There are 3 parts to it. I'm going to run the first part tonight, the next part next week, and then the final part, which is a full 50 minutes about Auschwitz and beyond, about the week after that. So tonight we start with a 30-minute segment. It was the first part of the interview. We had to cut it up because Jack is, he's old. He's 87 years old. And so it was not easy for him. And you'll see in the interview that emotionally it wasn't easy for him either. But I thank him so much for doing it, and I think that you as an audience, it's not a question of enjoying it, but are going to be fascinated by what you hear, what you see, and what you're going to feel. Ladies and gentlemen, my interview, part 1 with Jack Garfein. The man you're looking at is a person I got to know just, about 6 months ago, something like that? Yeah. Maybe 8 months ago. It was during the summer. Yeah. It was during last summer. And you were the greatest thing that's happened in my life recently.
Oh, my God.
Because you're all kinds of things. You're a teacher, you have history, and I want to tell people the person you're looking at is named Jack Garfein, and Jack has had a rather illustrious career in theater and film, and the stories he can tell about that are many, but it's like you led 2 lives. If we were to make a movie of your life, there would be 2 sections to it. And so I want to get to the first section today, okay?
Okay.
Where were you born?
What?
Where were you born?
I was born at the time it was Czechoslovakia, a city called Mukachevo in the Carpathian Mountains.
Wow. The Carpathian Mountains, one tends to think of Dracula.
Well, I think of Gogol, who said in the mountains there were these monsters that, when the earth was created, they're buried there, and not buried, they live in the mountains.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because as a kid, I used to be kind of afraid. I didn't know the story. I was so afraid of the mountains. And when I read Gogol, I understood what was going on.
Yeah. And your father did what?
My father was born, my mother was born the same. She was born in Austria-Hungary at the time. Yeah. And my father, too, was Austria-Hungary at the time, before Czechoslovakia was formed.
Wow.
And my father was one of the, probably formed a Zionist organization in Czechoslovakia. He knew, as a young man, he knew that the only solution for the Jews was to go to Palestine. That was called Palestine at the time. And he would go to very poor Jews in the mountains who, had hardly ever seen anybody outside. And he would tell them that, they knew the story of olden times about Moses, and would you like to go back there? And of course they said yes. He said, well, you have to do certain things to get back there. And he was a young man, he was like 19 or 20. And then he organized a Zionist organization there. And when he got married, the Zionist organization of Czechoslovakia inscribed him in Israel in the Sefer Zahav, in the Golden Book. But and then his job, his father had a lumber mill. And when his father died, he ran it anyway, but he took over the lumber mill, and that was his income, but
Right.
the most important to him was that the great sense of humor, because he was trying to get us to go to Palestine. And my mother, whose family was very wealthy, and they had vineyards in Mukachevo, not in the Carpathian Mountains, not in the Slovak part where my father came from, and she didn't want to go and he used to make fun. He used to say, well, because your father is putting on a new steel roof over the hotel, and so you're afraid about your inheritance, and this is why you didn't want to go. And I remember even as a kid, I used to hear him make fun of it,
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had one sister.
One sister.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it all gets kind of interesting. Not that where you grew up wasn't interesting, but you wound up in concentration camps.
Yeah.
And can you lead me into how that happened? Your remembrance of what was happening at the time that you did this?
Well, actually, Alex, this is a bad time for me right now.
Yeah.
Between the first night of Seder,
Passover,
yeah, Seder, until April 23rd, I think part of my physical problem and my health, I think it also has to do with that. It's because I was a kid. I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And when a society mistreats a family or people, the kids always think of their parent. They think their parents are supposed to protect them. They blame their parents. They don't say that.
Right.
But that's who they blame for having the problem. And and what happened was that I sensed already in Slovakia, because it started first there,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Slovak Jews were the first one to be deported to Auschwitz, okay? And we were told at one point that we had to be ready by a certain date. You could take so much sugar, so much clothes with you, and we're going to a labor camp, okay? And
but wait a minute, let's back up just a little bit.
Because I was brought up in Slovakia. This is my hometown.
Yeah.
So there, the first Jewish laws came in there.
Oh, okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. And so we were supposed to, at certain points, be outside. Now, the reason I'm here and able to talk to you is because my mother was amazing, absolutely amazing. Well, her family is very wealthy, so they were arranging they bribed the entire customs department in Michalovce, the city on the border with Hungary.
Right.
Yeah, it was supposedly, you know what that was, like $10,000. You know what that was during the war.
Well, that's...
Right. And he had a vineyard. He sold the most expensive wines in order to do that. And the idea was they were going to arrest my mother on the charge of dealing in foreign currency. And they were going to explain to the Slovak fascists that they needed her for the trial. They couldn't deport her. And after the trial, they would release her and they could deport her. And so what happened was I was then 12 years old, and my father, who was the head of the Jewish community, but of the Reformed liberal part.
Right.
So he had an idea. What he did was he organized the young people, and he was getting the Slovak army. They would permit them to get some weapons. And what he was going to do, because they said they're going to labor camp, he wasn't sure. But during the time of preparation, he would find out what was going on, but we were not going to go. He was going to get the young people to fight, would have been the only city
Yeah.
that would have rebelled against deportation, you know.
So your father knew what was happening. He knew what labor camps meant. Did he know that it was that there was going to be an extermination of the Jews, or they were just trying to separate the Jews from the rest of the population?
I don't think he thought of extermination, but he thought in Poland they killed Jews. And word came back. For example, the most awful story was that I remember is that they lined up the Jews, had them dig their own graves, families, men, women, and children, lined them up, and they ran out of bullets. So they had them wait until the next morning. They had them all stand there, wait until they came back and had the bullets, and they could kill them, you know. And what happened was that my father had heard the stories, and particularly my mother, because people didn't believe it. They thought, the Germans, Goethe, Schiller, this is not a country that would do things like that. They thought it was communist propaganda, you know. And so my mother went and called a women's meeting and said to them, now listen here, she said. She told them what was happening in Poland. And they went hysterical. And so the head of the Orthodox community, who was the overhead, he was the important guy, called my father in and said, what is your woman doing? Getting the women hysterical, getting stories about the Jews being killed like that in Poland and so on. And my father said, well, my wife is like the heroine in Troy with the Greeks who predicted the Trojans. That it's not in prayer. I can't think of her name now. And the Orthodox rabbi never heard of her. He said, who is that? What are you talking about? Well, she told the ancient people, the Trojans, it's not in prayer and all that. You better do things because you're going to get... My wife is like that. She knows. Okay? So what happened was he organized a rebellion during this time, and and they believed it. So instead of being deported, the whole town was put under, where you can't go in and out.
Right. It was ghettoized. It was under...
It was locked up.
Yeah.
And we all had to go get shots. Because what he did was, he got volunteers, young people who volunteered, to take typhus shots. And they took typhus shots. And then he said, it's a typhus epidemic. You can't take anybody.
Oh, okay.
And and so
But how did it come to be?
What?
How did it come to be that you were rounded up and sent away to the camps? How did it come to be that you got rounded up and sent away to the camps? Obviously, your mother's family money didn't do it.
I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So what happened was, my father, we were on our way to get the shots when a young man who worked for the Jewish organization came running and said they arrested the head of the religious leaders and they're looking for you because somebody told the authorities that this was all set up by you and the other guy. So we need a leader. So we want you to go to Hungary. And he turned to us, and my mother said, go, 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 And so he left, and because they thought, they didn't believe anything was going to happen, they thought they were going to get him back because they needed a leader, And so he went to Hungary, and immediately they decided, the Slovak fascists, the deportations, okay? And the priests were the ones in charge of the deportation. Wow. I found a picture, which I'm going to send to the Pope, of the priest in my local town with the deportation committee, because they took over. The head of the government was a priest, and the entire parliament and they voted for the expulsion of the Jews, except for 3 priests who walked out, who wouldn't agree, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was, guess what? They paid the Nazis 500 marks for every man, woman, and child that would be taken out with the idea that they would never come back, to take them out, okay? So my grandfather then in Hungary arranged for us to, to the customs guys, that they would pick up my mother and they would put her in jail, and they would arrange, my grandfather arranged for a smuggler to get her out of jail and take her across to Hungary. Okay? So guess what, Alex?
What?
They're waiting, they can't come into town. And I was 12, but I was very jealous because my mother was very beautiful, you know. At age of 18, they said she was the most beautiful girl in the Carpathian Mountains. And a reporter came from Prague. He said, I want to see the most beautiful girl in Prague. And then he wrote in the Prague paper, she's not the most beautiful in the Carpathian Mountains. She's the most beautiful in Czechoslovakia. So anyway, what happened was that we were then, in 2 days, and I was very jealous, you know. I thought, because I saw her talking to men and secretly. And then one time we were packing sugar, butter, and it was like in 2 days, or the next day, we were supposed to be in front of our house and be taken, you know, and go to the train station.
Right.
And be taken a labor camp. So what do I see? I see my mother talking secretly to a guy in the entryway of the building. And my sister I was 12, she was 9. And I said, oh, you know, mother. She said, don't be stupid. She loves Papa. What are you talking about, you know? And I said, oh, yeah? Now, guess what? Then the next thing, she tells us the next day, went one day ahead before the deportation. Okay, pack these things, take care of this, and I'll be back, you know? So she leaves. I decide to secretly follow her, right? My sister tries to stop me, but I find her. Mm-hmm. So just to show you, life goes on regardless of what happens, you know?
Yeah.
And so I followed, we had a huge garden, and I hid behind the woodshed. Mm-hmm. And what do I see? A guy in the garden fence suddenly raises his head. He's climbing up. And he notices me watching there. He says to my mother, who's that? Something like that. She comes running. She says, now you listen to me. I'm going to break your head. You understand? You get in the kitchen. I don't want you out here at all. Right? So I headed to the kitchen, but I didn't. I hid behind the chicken coop.
Yeah, well, what was this meeting she was having?
Yeah, I felt it was a rendezvous. This is a proof that she's interested in another man.
She was the most beautiful woman in the Carpathian Mountains, after all.
Also the fact that, you know, that I was a boy, a young kid at that point, and, you know, and my father wasn't around, and it shows you that aside from all that, the human element of jealousy, all that.
Yeah.
So then I hid, and she noticed me, and she came running up, and I disappeared in the kitchen. Okay. Afterwards, she comes into the kitchen. She says to me, now you listen. Now you listen to me. There's a war going on. And if I tell you to do something, you're to do it. And what you did now, you endangered us, okay? Don't you ever do anything like that. And she said to me, now lock the door. Give me the key. So I locked the door. She says, okay, children, these people we're supposed to deport her tomorrow to labor camps. I don't believe it. And you know, Madeleine Albright, when I told her the story, she just thought it was the amazing story she ever heard. Because my sister is 9, I'm 12, right? She turns to me and my sister and says, now, your grandfather, that's why I met the man, your grandfather arranged in the gypsy camp, the customs guy cannot come into the town. It's all locked up. So we have to walk to the gypsy camp, and there they will be with a car and take us to the city, Michalovce, where they had their department. And I said, but Mama, they said any Jew on the street, if she's seen, would be shot immediately. You know what she said? To a 9-year-old and 12-year-old. That's what Madeleine Albright couldn't get over it. She said, children, I think that death is better than what they're going to face in the cattle car. And this nobody knew about.
So how did it come to pass that you wound up getting deported, that you wound up in those cattle cars?
But what?
That you wound up
going
wait. To the camps.
So we walk, and in the square are the guys with machine guns. And the guy who has the candy store, there was a Jewish candy store that he took over. He obviously knew us, sees us. Guess what this woman did? Goes up to one of the fascist soldiers with a gun and says, listen, my husband is in the war. Oh, we had to we tore off our stars. In the war, I'm going to have a party on Sunday. I want you to come to the house and invite the guys. And she takes out a paper to write the address. So the guy thought, well, she must have a paper, something legal, because he was about to say, hey, Jews, you know. And so the guy said, took it. Right? We get out of the square, and I said, but how come we're lucky, and my friends, all those people, are lucky because your grandfather is rich, has a lot of money. You know? She was always very straight and clean. Now, we get to the car. There are 3 other Jews that are there. The customs guy. What? Children? We never made that deal. Well, how are we going to be stopped to check things? You're going to say they're going to deal in currency? You're out of your mind. And the other Jews said, Mrs. Garfein, please, you can't do that. And they said to the 2 customs guys, said, you have to take the children back. We can't do this. We're all in danger if we do that. You know what my mother did? Amazing.
Yeah.
You want to know about a heroine? She said, look, I told my children what is happening. They're prepared to die. So what I want you to do is, if we can't go with you, you have guns. You kill us, and I'll write a paper making you totally exempt that I asked for this. You did it purely on my urging. And then my kids are prepared to take it. Well, I wasn't. My thought was, I'm going to run. If they're going to kill me, fine. But I'm not going to stay and wait for them to kill me. So the 2 guys go off to the side, they talk, and they come up with the idea that we're going to go at that time, the European cars, the baggage part was not in the back. It was under the back seat, you know. So they said, okay, we can put the kids in the back seat, 2 screwdrivers on the edge. But the moment we stop for a checkup, you got to take the screwdrivers out and take a risk that I can have any air, and then put it back after we move. And my mother, again, look at this. You know what she did? She had 2 lemons that she brought. And she said, okay, here, 2 lemons. When you're in there and you feel out of breath or things, just squeeze the juice into your mouth, okay? And so I never told this story, by the way, officially to anybody. And so we were put under the seat, and at one point we were stopped. And they put the screwdrivers out, and the guards had a dog, and the dog kept trying to bark. He kept going the back seat there, and the soldiers with the dogs said, "Oh, they're after the Jews," because they saw my mother and the others sitting there.
Yeah.
So he said they're barking because of the Jews, right? Anyway, so we arrive in the prison. Okay, the warden comes out. "What, kids? Are you out of your mind? What is this? Where do we put them?" And then he said, and so my mother took off a ring that she had, I think it was her engagement ring, gave it to the warden, and said, "Please, let's find a way to do this." "Well, I can't. What can I do?" One of the customs guys said, "Well, I'll tell you what. My mother always wanted me to have kids. I don't have any. So I'm going to take the two of them home. I think my mother's going to be thrilled. So nothing to worry about." Okay? And so my mother goes off to jail, and we get in the car. He come to this outside peasant's house, and he said, "I never forget this. Mama, I have a big surprise for you." Right? She comes out, and children always want to have kids. Here they are. Look at that. And she understood right away, but something was going on. Anyway, so the first thing is she made sure we were washed, we were cleaned, we were, and then showed us the room where we were going to sleep. And there are huge pictures of Jesus, of Mary, and my sister said, "How can I say prayers in front of this?" I said, she told my mother the story. She said, "Yankush," that's what they call me.
Yeah.
He's very smart.
Yeah.
Because I said to her, "They understood those prayers. They were Jews, so don't worry." I said, "You can say the prayers. They were both Jews." Right?
So for the time you're kind of safe, would you say?
What?
Were you safe at that moment? Did you feel that you were kind of safe?
Well, I was worried because I wasn't with my mother, but we felt safe.
Yeah.
And then the arrangement was made for us to leave and, smuggle across the border. If we were caught, they would shoot us, So my mother sent word that everything was ready. We would meet in this part of the forest, and we go. And the woman, the mother, she said, "Well, why doesn't my sister stay?" Because I was circumcised, there may be problems. But with her, she could stay as a non-Jewish girl, right? And my mother sent word, "Please stay. Stay with them, and don't worry, we'll get you after the war." Do you know what she said? 9 years old. As a Jew, I was born. And as a Jew, I will die.
This is a 9-year-old kid.
When we were leaving, the mother went up to my sister and said, "You remind me of our saints. You could be like our saint," because the first day when she made dinner, my sister wouldn't eat because she said, "Why, that isn't kosher." And I was kicking her under the table and saying, "Stop it," and I was eating. And she said, so the woman that didn't understand, so she said, "I can't mix meat with milk, and I can't eat meat, it's not kosher." And she said, "Well, I'll put it separately, the dishes. The next day, the woman went and bought a whole set of dishes for my sister and only served her dairy. Anyway, so then came the night that we were going to the forest, and the customs guy drove us to that part of the forest, and we saw my mother. And my mother took out some money to pay him. He said, no, you don't pay me anything. Wouldn't take anything. It just shows you human beings, right? Exactly why I did a play in Paris a few years ago, the Kafka play, because it's called An Address to the Academy. And it's an ape that became human. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I found an epilogue, which no one knew existed. And in the epilogue, he's in a hotel after he addresses the Academy. And a fan walks in. Looking at you, I never knew you were ape. You're completely human. And he says, takes him. There's a smell over here. Opens his shirt. The guy says, well, I can't smell anything except humanity. But you, because of your background, you probably have a smell. He says, I hate humanity. Not individual human beings, mm-hmm. but humanity I hate. Right?
And this is kind of the lesson you learned through this whole process.
This is when I read this now in Paris, I said, that's my life. Yeah. Right? Always had individuals like that peasant woman.
And as we go along with the story, we'll see where there are individuals.
What?
As we go along with the story, we'll see there are individuals.
Yes.
Who were exemplary.
Absolutely.
And yet, and not the people that the audience here is expecting. But let's. Why don't we take a small break? Why don't we just take some time out here for a second, and we'll take a break, and we'll continue this soon. And that's it, folks. I'm not playing the theme or anything like that because, it's a rough interview. Listen, I want to apologize. I noticed that we were getting a large audience on that, and then all of a sudden something went wrong with the YouTube, and it glitched, and people saw that we went down for a second or so. And then they had to refresh their player in order to watch the rest of it. If you did not watch the rest of it, or you missed the story about his sister, or any part of it, it will be, you can rewatch it after the show tonight, and all of it will be there because we're recording all of it. We don't stop it just because we have a glitch in the video. And then next week we will continue with the second part of this, and then finally the third week we get to Auschwitz. He gets to Auschwitz, and we talk about that and what it's like to live in that sort of situation. It was a very rough interview for me to do for several reasons. Number one, Jack is not a young man, and so to keep him on target with the discussion took a little bit of work, but we did, and I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I'm hoping that you will be here next week, and we'll probably do it again next Wednesday for part 2. And then part 3 is longer than either of these two parts. It's 50 minutes, but it takes that much time, and I didn't want to interrupt it. The total interview that we did took over the space of, we took timeouts because, as I say, he's old. In fact, after the second one, we took about a half-hour break, which he went into my living room and sat down, and, he had to, because there's several other places that become very emotional for him. And then we came back, and I just figured, let it go to the end, okay? And that was 50 minutes. So the total amount of time of these interviews is 1 hour and 50 minutes. And I have edited them into an hour and 50-minute version, which I'm not going to put up yet. After I play the third one, I will put up the whole interview as one complete piece, because I hope that there'll be people out there who want to show it to their kids and to their families and watch the thing with them, because it's a very, very special interview. I love Jack. I adore him, and also I want to thank his lady, Natasha, who is just a wonderful woman. And it's been my blessing to know these two people, that at this point in my life I met up with somebody like Jack. And I'm amazed. I'm just amazed that, this is also, I'm making up, I mentioned this next week, I'm making up for something. The years ago, when I got married to my third wife, Susan, she had a family who were what they call Jewish Socialist Bundes, and they were freedom fighters during the war, and they were Jews, and they had I'd go to a Passover Seder, and they would tell all these tales and of all the things that they had done during the war. And my wife then said, because I had a video recorder, I had a black and white video recorder, she said, why don't we interview them? Why don't you interview them? And I never got around to it. And now, of course, they're all gone and dead. And I wasn't able to do that. This was my chance to at least somehow forget it, I can't even say words right now. Memorialize, yes, that's the word. Memorialize the life of a person who went through this. And he's one of the few last of them. I mean, let's face it, Jack went in when he was 13. If he was younger than that, if he even said he was 13, you'll find that out, he would have been dead. So anybody under the age of, say, 13 who went to the camps all died, okay? And now that puts the age of people who are alive at about his age, and they're dying off slowly but surely. There will be no one I could sit here and interview about this, and I thank him so much for doing it. I know it was terrible for him, because it was a terrible time, and you'll find out in the next episode why. Because Passover is a very special kind of moment in the history of this man. And, well, you'll hear it next week. Don't miss next week's, okay? And don't miss the big ending to this whole thing about 2 weeks from now, okay? All right, let me turn on the lines have been open. Nobody's called. You know, that happens. Hard act to follow, huh? You know. But I'm really glad I got to do this for you, the audience. Not an easy interview to do. Very difficult, as a matter of fact. Not only from the emotional part of it, but that it's a hard interview to do because you don't want to interrupt. Okay? Oh, here comes John Perulas, okay? You don't want to interrupt him. On the other hand, you want to keep him on track, and so that was the difficult part of it. Here's John Perulas, who likes to live in the dark.
Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm hearing some kind of weird feedback. No, this is a great show. I listened to the whole thing, and it was gripping, and I'm so happy you're doing this. These are the kind of stories we have to start telling, especially for that generation that are dying out. I have a friend, he's 93 years old. He was probably one of the last B-17 pilots that are still alive. Yeah. A guy flew 22 combat missions over Nazi Germany in the war. He survived, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And he's got amazing stories to tell. And, just to keep this in the public's conscience like you're doing is a great service to people. Man, this is great, Alex. I just can't compliment you enough on what you've done here, and I look forward to these other 2 shows.
Don't compliment me. Compliment Jack, because Jack went through it in this interview. Yeah. And it was not an easy interview for him to do. It was very difficult, and there was part of me that felt guilty doing it, because I didn't want to take advantage of Jack. But Jack, on the other hand, turned out
I think if you look at the higher purpose of this interview, then you should feel okay about it, because what you're doing, this is a real important story that people have to hear, and you're sharing that with a wider audience. So I don't think you have to feel any shred of guilt.
I wanted to document it, and I wish, I only wish that I had more time with him. But this was the kind of thing that was I couldn't do as a really long form, because if he were younger, I would have done 8 hours with him about this, But he's old, and he was emotionally frayed, because I don't want to give too much away, but the night they were arrested and taken away to the camps was during a Passover Seder, and we just got through with Passover. And every year it affects him pretty profoundly. And here I come in the middle of this to ask him to tell us the story. So, but that'll be next week.
This shit is still going on. I have friends and relatives in Lithuania, and one of them is a lawyer who is trying to create an awareness of in the academia, in the high schools and the college, about the Holocaust and Lithuania's role in it. And the fucking Lithuanians are still denying that, this is something that should be taught in the high schools and the colleges. And it's outrageous. The year is 2018, and they're still teaching Holocaust denial in the public schools and universities in Lithuania. Lithuania, Vilnius was known as the Jerusalem of Northern Europe. It had the greatest rabbinical schools, incredible learning, and this was nearly obliterated. And in fact, I think the Einsatz group and the fucking Nazis that did the extermination started in Lithuania, and the Lithuanians know this. They know this, and
the question is
how horrible.
How long do you keep them culpable? At a certain point, you've got to say whole generations have passed now, and all we wanted, all I find, what I found interesting is that I'm not Jack's age, but I'm about 9 years younger. And I could have very easily, if my father never left Europe, have been in a concentration camp, okay? Only I was living in San Francisco, California, and everything was rosy except when we had to black out the windows when there was an air raid. But outside of that, I grew up in an entirely different kind of atmosphere. To go through that, to me, is, how do you do it? And that's what I wanted to find out, and that's what you're going to find out in the coming weeks. Hello, Phil.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. And hello, boy, my mind is always out. Jeff.
It's Jeff.
Jeff. It's Jeff. Yeah.
That's very, it's always tough to hear these stories. I probably read at least a dozen books about the Holocaust, and there's no easy ones.
No.
It was interesting hearing his take as a young boy, seeing his mother, his family, having to deal.
Your microphone's a little over. It's kind of over modulating. It's not that it's loud here, but it's distorting. So
Okay. I'll get back to you.
And hold on a second. No, we can wait. We have all the time in the world. The longer I stall, the quicker it is to me going to bed. Okay.
And you know, hearing his perspective on his family, his sister, his mother, and what they had to do leading up to what we're going to get to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it. It was a good preamble to understand his perspective of what was going on, because you got to remember, his perspective is just seen through his eyes.
The one thing he said and he broke up crying when he said it, was what his sister had to say. 9 years old, a 9-year-old girl, who said
her kosher and
no. But the video might have gone out at that point. I don't know. Okay.
I don't think so. I was listening, and I had the video going, but I was listening and I was editing.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So the part where he says that his sister said, when they wanted her to do something or whatever, to pretend like she wasn't Jewish or something, she said, yeah. "I was born a Jew and I'll die a Jew."
Yeah.
You know? This is a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah. Well, I thought you said she was 12.
No, he was 12. She was 9.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
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 Well, you know, so people say that history is a living thing, and I think it really is. That's why it's important to hear these stories, because, I was speaking about Lithuania and the current state of things there. I mean, you still see thug marches in Ukraine and Lithuania, now in Poland, and if you guys see the red and black flag, it's red on top and a red stripe on top and a black stripe. That's a fucking Nazi flag, and they know it.
Who's this?
And, we have it in this country.
Yeah, the red and the black flag.
Well,
it's just two colors.
Not the flag, the hate, the bigotry.
Yeah.
And right now in France, old people, there was a 90-some-odd-year-old camp survivor, and as someone that she befriended from the age of 7, stabbed her to death, and did it for it's a Muslim thing. And here this hate just goes on for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just to me. It's. I always wondered, how do you live through something like that? And you'll find out it was very close. He almost didn't make it. I mean, there were several situations in which, he had to go by his wits to survive.
What was the Jewish population of Europe before the war? And then, of course, 6 million Jews were killed. So was the population 13 million? And
I have no idea. For some reason, you're distorting tonight. I don't understand why.
I'll mess with it.
Yeah. No, I don't know how many there were, and I don't know that that's a factor here. I mean, we know that 6 million Jews died. There are people who will deny that 6 million Jews died, but 6 million Jews died. It was, it was horrible. It was horrible because I just think about, I could have, it's funny. Years ago, I and a girlfriend of mine, we were driving through France, and I just said, if we were doing this and I named the number of years, something like 30, 40 years ago, we would have been arrested and I would have been killed, and who knows what they would have done to you, you're Greek. That it's amazing how a war disappears, and that 20 years after World War II, we weren't even thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. Here's from the Holocaust Encyclopedia, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. The Jewish population of Europe in 1933 was 9.5 million. So most of that 6 million, maybe more, obliterated.
2/3 of the population was wiped out. Is it still distorting?
A little bit, but don't worry about it. You can work on it later.
Yeah.
He's going to drive him nuts. I know that. I know him so well. Oh, I'm distorting. I can't distort. It's terrible. It's horrible.
Hey, I can't even see Phil on my screen.
What?
All I see is, I don't even see Phil. All I see is his lenses. I don't know what's wrong with my screen, but I see Jack, I see Alex, and I see myself, but all I see is Phil's lenses. Have you turned into a lens, Phil?
Yeah. Well, you know, you're collecting these things, and you know, there's a different lens for a different use.
Well, let's get away from the Holocaust because we'll be doing it again next week. So, you know, and then once we do the final episode, I think that's the one that everybody's going to just, you know, want.
Hey, but one just minor Holocaust thing in current times. You know, Paul Ryan is resigning or being kicked out as Speaker of the House, and the guy that's replacing him is a fucking neo-Nazi white supremacist bastard.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking, oh God, yeah, Paul Ryan's gone, but now look at what is replacing him. You know,
Right?
Jesus Christ.
You know, we get what we deserve.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that.
Now, was it McCarthy from California? Is that his name? There's two guys that are slated to possibly replace him.
Yeah.
One of them was a California guy.
Yeah.
And
well, they better hurry up and replace him because if in November the election goes the way a lot of people think, they may have a Democratic Congress, and then you won't need a Republican Speaker of the House.
well, I thought that the Nazi and the other one were the guys that were going to run for his Senate seat in is he in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I thought that they didn't have anybody that could run except for this Nazi and another one. I was thinking, you know, Patrick should run for that seat. He's not working, you know. Maybe he can get a
Well, you know, I think that it's a lot of times we see that congressmen and senators do leave their office because they're just tired. You know, I mean, he said he didn't want to do this in the first place.
No, he didn't.
And somehow he was, I don't know, railroaded into running for it, and then he kept it for 20 years.
No, that was the speakership that he was.
No.
Yeah.
He said he never wanted to become a congressman.
I don't know.
And
Really?
people convinced him to run, that he was, hey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope. You know, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can see he's 48 years old. If he leaves the Congress right now, yes, he'll be able to spend some time. He has young children, but he's a potential presidential candidate, and he'll be the right age. He'll be 50 if he runs in 2020.
Well, he can spend 2 years or so, or 3 years, till his kids grow up, being a stay-at-home dad, and that's great. And then he can run for the Senate, which I'm sure he probably will do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he's addicted to politics, so what the hell?
Oh, I thought you said he was a dick.
No. Let me tell you a story. I got to tell you a story about today. So, Phil, I'm buying, I still have to pay him for it. I'm buying a mini Mac from our friend here, Phil, and it was arriving today. Yeah. So, of course, I've got my thing up here with the UPS thing, and I'm refreshing it every now and then to see if it's here yet. And finally, it says delivered. And I open up the door, and it's not there.
Oh, shit.
And then I go, it says front door. So I figure front door to them is the lobby, in which we have a big sign that says UPS, FedEx, and Post Office do not leave packages in the lobby. And you know what they do? There are more packages that have been left in the lobby since that sign went up than before. Okay? So it isn't at the front door. I go look in all the different lobbies to see if there's a package. There's no package. I finally chase out the door and find a UPS truck, and he says, well, I don't deliver there, but let me call the guy. He calls the guy. The guy said, I left it in the lobby. No, I left it at their front door.
Trump Tower?
Yeah, their front door.
Trump Tower.
So I'm going, they didn't leave it at my front door. And now I'm talking to the people who are at UPS. And I'm saying, what the hell happened to this?
I insured it. It's good.
Huh?
It's insured.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's nowhere to be found. So finally, I had called UPS, and they said they would call me in an hour. And the guy calls me up, and he said, well, I'll get a hold of the guy and find out what happened. And I go down and to just see maybe it's somewhere down there or something. Or the guy who's coming over, he's supposedly coming over. That's what the guy delivered it to see if he can find. I open up, the door opens up, and there's the guy, and he's got the box. He took it to another building. You know why, Phil?
Oh.
Because you said apartment 8L, and we're 8I.
Got it.
So he was really nice. I mean, it was really terrific. I mean, I was ready to yell and scream at UPS, and then I went, "Oh, it's Phil."
You had sent me your address a long time ago, and maybe you didn't use a capital, or you didn't. It looked like an L.
See, that's the problem I always have. So what I usually do is I use a lowercase I, so that there's a dot over it.
Yeah, that's what screws up with the...
Yes, because if I do put 8I and I make it a capital I, sometimes it's just like a straight line, and it looks like it could be an L.
Like an L.
Yeah. So anyway, so I finally get it. So now I'm distraught enough as it is. I boot the thing up, and it will not recognize my mouse. You know how when you boot up the first time, it's supposed to recognize your mouse? It doesn't. I got a whole bunch of other mouses in the house. I tried to make it work with those. Wouldn't recognize them. Finally, I go and I get a mouse I had that's like 10, 15 years old. I think it came with my first Mac. Click it on, the thing recognizes that one.
Well, it'll probably recognize anything from now on.
No, once I got in there, I went and looked Bluetooth, and it said, this one is not connected, blah, 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 blah. So I then made it connect to one of my other mouses. So now I finally got that working. So what else didn't work? Oh, yeah, then it wouldn't, let's see, it wouldn't, I had a new hard drive I bought, and I wanted to erase it because it was made for Windows. And so I erased it, and then it said I can't do that. So I had to take it to another machine and do that. I finally have gotten the thing up and running. So, call me tomorrow, and I'll give you the credit card.
It's no problem. Did you like the other goodies?
Yes, he sent me a book about what do you call it? Big box stores. Big box swindle. And the ear stuff, which I haven't used yet, but I'm getting ready to need it because I'm feeling itchy in my ears. But
Q-tip.
Yeah, no, I'm very. Thank you very much. So I guess but it works beautifully. Otherwise, I mean, I just couldn't get it up and running. It would not recognize.
Keyboard. What did the guy take it out of the box?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. He sent me a keyboard too. So so I don't need it. I was going to get a new keyboard for that. So.
Yeah, that's why I think I had one. So here.
Yeah, so I'm fine, and it works. It seems to work great, and I bought a whole new monitor to run it on, and so I can put an HDMI. It has an HDMI input, and it looks terrific, and I'm going to use it as a secondary machine, and once this thing breaks, it could actually replace a Mac Pro, So
it's it has. I got it. It's got a lot faster.
It's a 3.0. It's a 3.0. Yeah. Dual core or quad core. I can't remember.
Or 16 gig.
And with a Fusion drive.
That's good.
It's the i7.
The Fusion drive, which it boots up really fast.
Yeah.
So it's just great, Phil. Thank you. Wonderful. Huh?
It was a good machine.
Yeah, it was a good machine, and I think it probably. But I can't figure out why it wouldn't take the Bluetooth. But somehow I did a workaround and I got it working.
Yeah, sometimes you have to plug it in before you could, and get yourself going.
Oh, you mean plug in a mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a plug-in mouse in the house, but I did have this old clunky, clunky one, and it was fine. And now, of course, it always recognizes the Bluetooth when I start it up. So, so that was my whole thing. But I was just so panicky about where is the damn thing. And the guy said, I went up and got it. He said, it was still in front of their door. He said 8L. And it probably would have eventually gotten to me because people are very nice around here and would probably come over and drop it in front of our front. But they wouldn't know where to drop it. Well, they could ask who Bennett Schwarzman is somewhere in the building.
I don't even know how I addressed it. I don't think I addressed it, Bennett Shores.
Well, no, it was Alex Bennett it was sent to. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so I got it. It's there, and I love it because it takes up so little space. You know, all the other machines, they're towers and they get hot. This thing, I find that my one that I use here is for the server, never gets hot. No. During the summer when it's really hot in here, maybe it'll start getting warm. You know, but that's it. No problem.
Well, when it starts emitting sparks, just turn it off.
Well, I'm happy because this is the one that went bad, and they fixed it or they replaced it.
They replaced it.
Yeah.
They put a new. Well, I think it's the same serial number. I think they put a new motherboard in it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, in which case it'll probably last forever.
And it's only because I complained that I was that it was cutting out when I was on Skype, and I think that was probably due to something that I had clicked, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably my fault.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the story with me and the new equipment, and I'm very happy to get it. You know, and thank you so much. And he also has a, you know, he's a great guy to do business with if you ever want to do business with him, because he has a warranty on it. He said if you don't like it, just send it back.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, what did I tell you?
And don't pay me until you're completely satisfied. So I'll be completely satisfied, say, in 2-3 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't remember. Whatever the thing is, it's a nice machine. Enjoy it. The Big Box Swindle, though, is a very interesting book because you were talking about how these Home Depots and things like that, and Amazon. Now, this was written a few years earlier. But basically, it's how these big boxes come into play, what they do to the small businesses in the downtown areas, how they'll move their big box to the outskirts of town, and then what happens is they build these buildings just to last about 15 years. And what happens is they devastate the downtown. All the good-paying jobs, guys that had medical and benefits, those guys lost their jobs. They end up working for the big box in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Then the rest of the stores start moving around the big box, and then the big box moves again. You know.
Well, you know, something. This sounds a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit. There years ago. And this was a thing that Standard Oil did. And they were rat bastards, you know. They were trying to take over the world. If somebody had a great gas station, and maybe they were, you know, some independent brand of gas, and they were doing great business on this corner because they had the right corner and the right neighborhood, and you know, and they did just an incredible business. And so what Standard Oil would do was they would start a gas station on the other corner, and it was called Yellow Dog Gasoline. They were called Yellow Dog stations. If you ever hear the term about it's a yellow dog, this is what it means. And what they would do is they would just come in and just give shitload prices for gas. I mean, if this guy the best he could afford was, you know, selling gas in those days at 19 cents a gallon. They'd come in and start selling it for 3 cents a gallon. They didn't care. They were Standard Oil, and they could afford it. But they weren't called Standard Oil. They were called Yellow Dog. And then finally, this other guy would go out of business. And when he folded, they folded the Yellow Dog and put up a Standard. And so when you talk about that, it's kind of the Yellow Dog situation.
Standard was owned by John D. Rockefeller.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad had several Standard gas stations. He had 4 of them over his lifetime.
Really?
Yeah. He got screwed by him too. Basically, he got screwed during the years of the as they came into the self-serve stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a service station. You know, the old service stations, and he got. Leased out.
You remember that, service stations?
Oh yeah, we had a real service station where we were in San Mateo, and we had a gas station where we actually had customers, and we had customers up in the Hillsboro area where we would actually have keys to cars,
Mm-hmm.
and we would go up and get cars and service them and bring them back to the customer, and they wouldn't even know that we were there.
Right.
We'd call them up and say, "Hey, we serviced your car. Come pay us when you're ready." And we let them know while they were upstairs watching TV. We'd get their car and do their stuff. She even had customers that one of them ran out of gas up in San Francisco and had her car towed from San Francisco down to our gas station because she would only have my dad put gas in it.
Wow. Wow.
See, now today you'd be shot if you did something like that.
It was crazy.
Well, I mean,
he got priced right out of that gas station.
I remember, yes, folks, I'm old. Okay, so let me sound like an old fart here for a moment. But I remember when my father would pull into a gas station, 3 guys coming out.
Yeah.
And
I was one of them.
all working the car. One would do the windshield, another one would check your oil under the hood, and the other guy was pumping the gas. Yeah, and they were all kind of dressed in these outfits with, like, I remember they were like rubber or latex bow ties. Remember those?
Yep.
And a
I used to
cap.
use it to check the oil.
And a cap, and they, yeah. I mean, they literally, you would pull in, and it was like an invasion of these people.
They checked your tires.
Yeah.
I remember I had a buddy in high school who worked on the Taconic Parkway. They have these gas stations, and are you familiar with them? You ever see them on the Taconic?
Sure, I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are these little gas stations, and so we used to hang out there because I was in high school. We had nothing else to do, and he was our friend. So car would pull in, even though he was the only one getting paid. We were all out there cleaning the windows and
and the little old ladies would sit there inside and go like this on the windows.
Yeah.
Missed the spot. You missed the spot. There's a bug right here.
Yeah. Here comes Rob Alfano, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Rob.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
His mic always sounds the best.
That's his voice.
Well, yeah, it's the mic and the voice.
I sound like this off the mic.
Yeah. No, he has a great set of pipes. It's a shame that there's no radio left. Last night we had Albert on. Albert called.
I heard. I was listening to it. I was laying in bed listening, and I was like, oh, I should get up. And I'm like, I'm just so exhausted. But I listened.
But we waxed about how there is no radio business,
Right.
And that's a terrible thing, because a guy like Rob, a voice like that going to waste. Well, it's not going to waste. We have the advantage of using it here, but I mean that's a great set of pipes. I've never, I don't have a voice like that. I've never been a good announcer. Okay. Yes,
yeah,
Rob.
I wouldn't be in the business today if there was a radio, really, I don't think, because it doesn't pay enough. You got to get lucky.
But you remember when radio did pay enough?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
I mean, hell, I mean, I even when I wasn't a big name, I was making a decent wage,
Yeah, well, you were in San Francisco and New York, and you're going to make a good wage there.
Well, I was also in Sacramento, California, and I was also in Modesto, California, and I was in Houston.
You're talking the early days.
Yeah, I'm talking the early days, but I'm saying that even their video went out again. This is ridiculous. What's the problem?
Nothing dropped out for me. It's been going.
On Skype or on the website?
On YouTube. No,
the only thing that's
it is
dropped
going,
out for me is Phil. All I see is his camera lenses. I don't see any Phil.
Well, that's because you have a lens and
Yeah.
It did drop out on YouTube.
that is.
Yeah, it did. It didn't drop out on another machine, though. That's the thing. It didn't. How many machines did I? Let me see my other machines here.
Oh yeah, it did drop out.
Yeah, it didn't go out there, and it didn't go out. Did it go out there? No, it didn't go out there either. That's strange. It went out on.
You were praising YouTube, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I was praising them because this is the first time this has happened in maybe the 2 months that we've been using YouTube. So it must be something, a little something wrong, hinky with their system, which I'll give them that. You know, I'll give them that. But in the middle of the Holocaust story, I could kill them for that one. But you know, but no, the other machines kept going. So I guess I just have to assume that it was a little glitch, and some machines couldn't survive the glitch.
Would any of you guys want to be stuck in an elevator with Mark Zuckerberg? I mean, that guy just creeps me out. I'm sorry. You know?
He did a decent job. He stood up to the scrutiny.
Oh, he if I were him, I would have told them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, he wasn't up against much.
No, I mean to begin with, to listen to these senators try and act like they know what they're talking about because somebody in their staff wrote them something to read, and then
reps weren't much better.
Huh?
The reps weren't much better either.
The Republicans, Democrats were terrible. Republicans were terrible. The senators were terrible. The congressmen were terrible. And then you'd always get the one that would try the political card. Well, are you prejudiced against conservatives and blah, blah, blah? No, they're not. They'll take anybody's fucking money. Are you out of your mind?
Well, I think they were talking about the two black women, that Diamond and Silk.
Yeah.
They took down.
That's two people.
Posts.
It's two people. And what was the reason they took them down?
They said it was inappropriate and so forth. Now I watched the thing. There maybe it was slightly shitty, but
what do you mean shitty? I mean, I know the two women because to begin with, one of these senators said that these women never get any publicity, and the way I know these women exist is I saw them on like Kimmel.
Right.
You know,
it was the way they were tearing into whoever they were tearing into that they weren't happy with them. I thought it was kind of negative. And I didn't think it was worthy to be taken down. Was
it bashing? Was it bullying? Was it something that, you know?
Not entirely. It just wasn't. It wasn't upbeat.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say that Facebook took it down because they were conservative, because they were Trump. I think they're for Trump.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
but no, you know, that's what they're saying. And I guess that they, for months, it started in September 7th of last year, that they were dealing with Facebook and trying to get them not to take it down. And no matter what they did, Facebook was determined to take it down. Now, Zuckerberg today said that was a mistake. You know, so maybe something positive will come of this.
Well, the positive was they got all this damn publicity. And they, you know, it's not like Facebook is the only place they can ply their trade. They could go over and do it on YouTube, which they're probably doing right now.
Yeah, well, at least YouTube pays.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea to think that there's an ideological thing going on at Facebook that makes them take things off, you know, is, I think, a bit ridiculous because they're a company that's in the business of business, okay? And they're not going to take political sides. Do you agree with me on that, Rob?
They took a political ad that I try to boost and pay money for, and it was a poll from Change.org about a local issue here in Marin, and it said I violated their terms of advertising, and I read that and I thought, I just had a link to Change.org.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm doing my business with YouTube is I find that they're less draconian that way. They're not that shitty about stuff, you know.
Yeah. But you know, maybe YouTube, you know, it's a public company, but. Do people need to have that kind of access? I thought the whole idea behind it was you see what your friends from high school are eating and, you know, what their kids look like.
Right.
And it's become this visceral kind of platform where people can have road rage. And, you know, I think Rob was smart in getting off of it early. You know, he just had good timing.
Well, yeah. Why did you get off of it, Rob?
I just couldn't take I couldn't take fighting with friends and family. I couldn't take keeping my mouth. I tried keeping my mouth shut when I saw stupid stuff posted, when I saw relatives and friends posting fake news, when you just go to Snopes and, so I started like posting the Snopes links on the, I was like, what am I doing? Why? It's not going to make a hell of a bit of difference to anybody.
I just use it to publicize the show. That's the only reason I do it at this point. By the way, turn your mic down a little bit. You've got the same problem that Phil has, where there seems to be a little over-modulating. It's not that you're loud, but that you're distorting.
Did what I changed to fix it?
Yeah, you could take it down some more, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
You could always try whispering, Phil.
No, I'll use that mute button.
Yeah. I was fed up with Facebook quite a while back, but the only reason I do it is to just let people know, hey, the show's on, listen to the show, here's who's on tonight. I try to not interact with it too much because I just find, as you did, that it just gets fucking annoying. If I said something where I just believed something, all of a sudden somebody would go after me for it. There were all these people laying in wait to be naysayers, and fuck you. I don't need that. It's my Facebook page. Yeah. Goodbye. You're no longer my friend. Blow me. Mm-hmm. But people say, well, you can, Zuckerberg was saying, well, you can decide who's your friends and who aren't. You can decide what information you want to give and don't give. But the fact is that you have that ability, but you don't have to have a person be a friend to post something on your page.
You can nobody can post anything on my page. Dan used to post all of this stuff about pot and so forth, and my mother calls me and says, "Who's this Dan?" And I said, okay. But finally, I had to ban my mother because she commented. It didn't matter. So she got banned. And she's 90.
You are a motherfucker. No, you're not, obviously.
She's banned. But she probably just figures, I don't know why it doesn't work.
I unfollowed, or not unfollowed. What's the word for it when you don't look? No, I didn't unfriend. I did it so I had so many family members who I just stopped seeing. I turned off their.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, unfollow.
Unfollow. I had so many friends that I unfollowed. It was the first. And then I realized, I said, what the fuck am I doing?
See, but I don't know about you, but I feel sorry for Zuckerberg in this respect. That, he's not the only game out there. And he's the one that the Cambridge Analytica used for their devious ways. Okay, huh?
They might have used some of the other ones, and they just didn't get caught yet.
Well, I don't feel sorry for him at all.
I agree, man. I agree with you, Rob.
To be on top of this shit. And what is this? I will tell you, I burned out. I have been a CNN junkie now since the election. I finally burned out. I didn't know anything about the Zuckerberg thing. I just, for the first time, launched CNN.com, and I see Zuckerberg admits Facebook collects data from people who haven't even signed up. What the fuck?
What the fuck?
How do they do it?
Hey, check out Matt Taibbi on Rolling Stone. He's got the most intelligent analysis of what's wrong with Facebook that I've read anywhere.
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, to begin with, Facebook was created in a dorm room at Harvard by a bunch of people smoking pot. Okay. And it goes from that to being a major multi-billion-dollar organization. And all of that within a very short amount of time, almost not enough time for them to stop smoking the pot, okay, if they have it all. And so as all these things are happening, they don't see any responsibility to what they're doing. They don't see a responsibility to their mission. They just see that they did something they did for fun. People were having fun with it. They added more fun to it. Oh, hey, look, I'm a billionaire now because I was just having fun. And so, I mean, it's not like they sat there and said, what is our responsibility to America? Because to begin with, they probably never thought that their platform would be used to rig a campaign.
Right.
You know, that was probably the last thought they ever had. They thought, hey, everybody will just be talking to everybody else and be a way to have communication with other people and so on.
In 2011, I listened to a speech by this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about I think it's called the Newfield chip, where it's in your phone and they know where you are. And let's say you're in Walgreens and you're looking at potato chips, it sends you a coupon, 50 cents off Wise potato chips or something. And so this technology, we knew was coming, and and they thought they were.
Well, wait a minute, Phil. Of course, people are going to know when you use your phone where you are, because you're using a cell phone. You're not using a wired phone. Yeah. And they always knew where you were with the wired phone because they knew where you were calling from, okay? Right. But now they know they can hone in on where you are and where you're traveling because you use that phone. It goes to cells. It bounces from one cell to another, and that's a way of finding these things out. Anybody who thinks that their privacy is sacrosanct in this age of these kind of electronics, and yet they want these electronics, better go fuck themselves, because I've got news for them. They know where you are. So
on Facebook, I put out, I got my phone number there, my address, the whole thing. I figure it's a way to find me. And I knew that I was putting that information out there and it was going to be accessible.
I can find my wife anytime I want to. I go to find my friend on the iPhone and I can find, oh, hey, she's taking the bus right now. She's coming home, you know.
Yeah, that's fine.
I better make the bed.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're not using your phone, you have an easy pass in your car, right? It knows where you're going.
Yeah,
There's GPS every which way. We have no privacy. But there are companies who can take this data and it's double-edged, right? This technology is a double-edged sword, because as good as it can be and as convenient as it can be is how bad it can be and how it can be used against this country. And that's what happened to us.
Early on in around 2000, I did a carpet job I mentioned for a company called DoubleClick. Mm-hmm. And DoubleClick is now owned by Google. But what their deal was is they kept track of the sites that you would visit, so they'd see what you were interested in, and therefore they could direct ads to you to entice you.
Minority Report.
Well, no, the DoubleClick was the original company, I think, that followed people's patterns.
Right.
But they were also good for something too. I can't remember what, but you always had the ability to go on into your browser and say, DoubleClick, you can't come in here. DoubleClick was used a lot for cookies and for being able to bring up things on your screen selling you advertising.
They were good for $25,000 worth of carpet.
They do it everywhere. I mean, when you go to the grocery store, what do you get? Coupons after you bought everything. You get coupons for everything you bought the last time you were there.
But anybody who thinks, that you're going to be on Facebook and then Facebook is free and that somehow there isn't a price to pay here and that price is a certain amount of privacy is nuts. And nobody told you you can just opt out of Facebook.
Except for the fake news. What's so bad about them marketing and getting your information and selling it to other people? You signed up. There was an agreement. When you clicked on it, it says, I agree. And that allowed them to use information.
But there's a truth in advertising problem there. They're not really telling you the scope of what they're doing with their information.
But you got to know that they are. Well, how stupid are you to think that nothing's being done with your information when a while back you looked up Nestle cookies, and then all of a sudden there are a bunch of cookie ads.
Oh,
you know,
the agreement is this
cancer
thick.
or diabetes.
Is that
or
the agreement? What's that agreement?
It's this thick.
Yeah.
You read the agreement.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I would look at something like, you know, prostate cancer or diabetes or, you know, something like that. And then all of a sudden I get barraged with articles and offers and so forth. I was looking for a bed, you know.
But what it is you went to a site. You know, a lot of times you'll blame this on Facebook, and you can't blame it on
Yes.
Facebook. You go to a site for cancer or something, and it drops a cookie on your computer
Yeah.
when you accept to do something there. Okay,
Hey, you know the ones
and then
that
it
were
will
just-
show up. It will show up on Facebook as an ad because that cookie is lingering in the background, and then you turn around and you blame Facebook. All Facebook really is doing is they have advertisers, and they're simply targeting the advertising of their advertisers to people they think would be receptive to the advertising. That's the same as a sponsor going to a network and saying, I want to buy this show because you've got these kind of people watching. Why on the 6:30 news every night are nothing but medicines being advertised? Because they know old people are there.
It's
And
not,
one of the senators.
Wait a
one of the
minute.
senators-
Rob's trying to say something.
yeah, it's not the same.
You don't think it's the same?
No, it's a fraction of it because it's the tip of the iceberg is the same. The rest of it is a lot of underhanded crap. They're stealing data from you. It's not clear when you go on Facebook and go to the settings. It should be crystal clear what you're giving away, and it's not. You got to be a lawyer to figure out.
It sounds like they will now. I know that John was trying to say something too.
You know where this doesn't work? Guns. You know, I've Googled different types of guns, you know, with assault rifles. I wanted to see what kind of models and stuff are out there. I never, ever get a gun ad. Never. It never shows up. So I think there is some kind of blocking software.
Yeah, I don't think they put those kinds of ads on Facebook because I don't
Right.
get a gun either. I do. I think it's in the mail. You know, I joined the NRA, so
I'll tell you.
do get email.
Yeah. If I go to, let's say, okay, here's a good example. When I used to have it on my browser, like Drudge, okay, and let's say I was some other site looking at. I was at Amazon looking at TV sets, and now I go to the Drudge, and what am I getting? I'm getting ads for Amazon's TV sets.
Right.
Okay. So Amazon is dropping those little turds in my browser, you know,
Right.
and I much more so than Facebook ever did. Now, mind you, I have no great love for Facebook because I think they're a little too snotty with the way they run their video thing, and it's not very good. Tonight is the first night that we've had any problem at all with YouTube. And it recovered itself. I didn't have to sit there and reboot here and do all of that. It just recovered itself. But every time with Facebook, I had nothing but troubles. And I had troubles also with if I would play something and they got snippy and thought it was in copyright and it wasn't. All of a sudden, there's no picture there anymore. It's blanked me out. Well, fuck you, Mark Zuckerberg. You know, I got better things to do with my life. So that's why I went to YouTube. No, I don't have the same audience size watching my videos as watched me over on Facebook, but so fucking what? You know
what's going to come out of this that I think is going to be good? It's called opt-in. Now, I think that what's going to happen is they're going to set a precedent that you have to opt in if you want things. And thank God.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, that's what they said.
What do you think, Rob? Do you think that's going to happen?
We
Not
said
that they can help it, because who would opt in?
nobody.
Unless
Just make the stuff you want.
they're going to tell you it's $1.99 a month for Facebook unless you opt in.
Good
Said that
point.
was a possibility.
Well, that is not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. Or better else, for $1.99 a month, you can opt out of anything. You know,
That's their
do
saying.
it
There
that
might
way.
be a business solution. That's their saying.
Yeah. Yes, Jeff. By the way, Jeff, your picture isn't wide tonight, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, same with Phil.
No, Phil is. Phil's wide.
No, not for me. He's just a bunch of lenses.
Well, I don't know what your problem is. Anyway, but don't worry about it, Jeff. You look fine.
All right. Hey, let me talk now, and then I'll reload it.
Yeah.
I work with a small company. It's a one-guy company, and he develops software and things like that. And he has a program. It's called You Are Here, and what he does is while there's a restaurant that he's working with, and on their restaurant they put little beacons close to the restaurant. And so if you're working down this mall and you get close to that restaurant, it'll pick up on your cell phone from this beacon, and it'll say, hey, for lunch today, we give you 20% off of whatever, because the burgers are great today. So do you think that's wrong or good or bad?
I think it's good. I think activists should use that kind of stuff to put out political messages on the street.
Yeah. Well, actually, he's done that.
Yeah,
too.
Rob?
That's like broadcast advertising to me. That's not the same as Facebook, because this is just, we're sending you a message. We're not spying on you to see what you're interested in.
But I didn't turn the radio on to get the message. In other words, I didn't make myself available to that message. The fact is, it hit my phone as a message, and that's. But you know what this reminds me of?
Technically, he gets message that he's not even looking for.
Remember the sci-fi picture Minority Report?
Yeah.
And when a guy would walk down the street, it would say, "Hey, Bob, would you like a good hamburger?" Because it recognized that you were Bob.
Now,
that's what we've come to. That's really what we've come to.
What you got to do is put these beacons in other people's stores so that when somebody walks into Joe's carpet, they say, "Oh, well, come on over. We're having a sale at my carpet."
Hey, they're going to start implanting nanochips. You won't even know you got one because they'll put it in food. You eat something, and it's going to stay with you. It's going to go through your digestive tract, and you know.
Yeah, I'll be in your car.
I figured it out. Reason you're probably seeing only part of my picture is that it's cut off on your screen, and if you click on my picture, it'll probably go full. Did you do it?
Yeah. Nope, it's not working. Nope. It clicks to a little bit bigger, so I see a corner of your head.
Huh.
Nope.
Huh? No.
Yeah.
I don't know. What kind of machine do you have?
It is a new computer. It's an Acer 1080.
So it's a PC.
Screen.
It's a PC.
It's got an Intel 1.0.
I don't know why I'm using a PC
i5.
here. And what kind of browser are you using?
SlimJet.
What?
Yeah, I use SlimJet. SLIMJET.
Yeah,
because
why?
all the other browsers are too invasive. I don't like any of them. Even what's oh shit! I'm blanking on the name.
Chrome.
No, I was thinking of NetObjects. What is that?
Never heard of it.
No.
Well, anyway, hello to Tim, by the way. Tim, did you have something you wanted to say here?
Well, actually, you said exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking right before you mentioned Minority Report that someday soon you'll be walking down Times Square and all the huge screens, everybody will see a different message based on who they are.
Yeah.
Almost like wearing Google glasses.
Right.
All be virtual reality. Actually, the Olympics had some augmented reality. Did anybody catch that?
No.
In South Korea?
No.
Some of the opening and closing ceremonies, some of the pageantry was you had to look through your phone like you would with Pokemon Go.
Oh, one of the stupid.
Well, here.
Some of the lights and colors to it.
Here's something that's kind of interesting, though, is that and they don't seem to have. What happened to Jeff? We just lost Jeff.
Oh, he said he was going to fix something.
Yeah. Anyway,
so.
Where was I? So I wanted to continue with that.
Talking about the.
Yeah. There was a thing that they were talking about, and I didn't see. It's never come to be, so I don't know what the story is with it. But we never seem to have had a resolution to it. But there was a story a while back that the networks were thinking of doing targeted advertising. They felt that much like the internet can target you by putting an ad on a page because of who you are and because you looked at something and you were interested in that, they could do the same thing with television. And that everybody sat at home and got commercials coming during the breaks on those TV shows would get different commercials. Like if I went,
that's like a Max Headroom. Remember that? That was a brilliant show.
In other words, it would all be
in the late 80s,
it would be automatic targeted advertising.
Yeah.
And they felt that if you could do what?
How would they get the feedback on you to know what it is that they would target to you?
Through Facebook.
That I don't know, but they felt that if you could do it, they felt if you could do it with computers, with the internet, you could do it with TV.
Alex, they have that on Max Headroom.
No, they do have it. I'll tell you where they have it. Do you ever watch shows online?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched a show in one town and then the next week you watched it in another town and it was a different set of commercials and they were local advertisers?
That's right. Yes. See,
Well,
so
isn't that a cable thing?
Yeah, but that's not going to get it down to the person. That'll get it down to a region.
Yeah.
I don't see the only way I can see.
But what I'm saying is that's an example of the fact that if I'm in New York and they sense that I'm picking up the show, watching it in New York, they have a certain set of commercials. And then I was up in Vermont and I was up there and I went, gee, all these commercials that I'm getting off of ABC are for like Mark's cider shop, you know.
Right.
If you watch your TV through streaming, it's already being done, I believe, right?
That's what I said. That's what I said. Yeah.
And then pretty soon, the only way to get TV, probably 10 years from now or even sooner, streaming will be the only way to get your TV soon.
Oh, by the way, Jeff is now wide.
Yeah.
I just
and also
I reset the whole thing, so
Yeah.
I don't know what was wrong.
Now I see Phil wide. I see your whole thing in that little can of lube in the on your shelf way in the back there.
Yeah, right there.
You mean the can of lube he doesn't need anymore?
Yeah, you put that in a cigar. It's something you put in a humidifier for cigars.
Cigar juice.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Hey, did you hear that Zuckerberg canceled all of his future testimony?
All of his future
Came
testimony?
down with a bad code.
Cars.
iCar.
Zyka.
Oh, Zycar.
What is that?
It's a what is it? It's some sort of liquid
It's
that
called.
Wait a minute, you have a bottle of something and you don't know what it's for?
Yeah,
sure
no,
tastes good.
I guess tomorrow, Zuckerberg's avatar will visit Congress.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've been seeing, man.
This stuff is a humidor.
All I know is he's probably going back. He's probably going back to the California and just saying, "I can hardly wait to rip this fucking suit off of me." You know.
Yeah. Well, he was so respectful, congressman, congresswoman. He prefaced every answer with their rank.
Well, he doesn't want to be regulated, Phil.
Yeah.
He wants to decide what kind of regulation he's going to be subject to. That's why he was nice.
Actually, his first TV interview that he did with that woman, she asked him about that, and he said maybe Facebook does need to be regulated. I don't want to do the regulation, but maybe Facebook needs to be regulated. He did say that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. Regulated by who? These morons who don't even know technology. Come on, do you really want some of those idiots who are asking him questions?
Like David Hogg.
Yeah,
The new generation, the millennials.
Yeah, they're chomping at the bit to come up with some more regulations. They don't feel like they're doing their job unless they regulate you. That's why Trump is out there just knocking them off left and right. Because
hey, Rob, did you see where Sandberg canceled her interview with, was it ABC? Because Martha Raddatz was going to interview her at the last minute.
Who's that? Who is that?
The second in command of Facebook canceled an interview on ABC because it wasn't going to be Stephanopoulos. It was going to be Martha Raddatz, who she knew would grill her like she should be grilled, and she canceled the last minute.
I've seen that woman from Facebook, and she's a pretty sharp cookie. I think she can take the grilling.
I think legal told her not to, because she knows that she gets softball from Stephanopoulos.
No, but I don't think she's afraid of anybody. I've seen her interviewed, and she's a pretty tough cookie.
But I think Martha Raddatz is even tougher than she is.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like WWE.
Is that is this come under a conspiracy theory? What he's saying?
No, it's a true story. But I think
it's always a true story, but it's really a conspiracy.
Is it really a true story, or where did you read it as a true story? Tim?
Uh-oh.
He's mad.
He's been censored.
Tim?
I got another call. I'll be right back.
Well, that's what you should do with Martha Raddatz. I've got another call. I'll finish this interview in a couple of minutes.
Hey, they call a show and then they put you on hold.
I'll tell you a great story. I'm going to tell you a great story about an interview. A friend of mine named Earl Dowd did a record years ago called The First Family, which still is maybe the biggest selling comedy album of all time. Was interviewing a guy that landed an interview with Salvador Dali. Now, I don't know if a lot of people out there remember who Salvador Dali is, but he was an artist. He was a wacko artist with a big mustache and really weird. And before the interview, he had heard a story that this was at the St. Regis Hotel, that when Dali would book in to the hotel in New York City, he would get these little like peanut butter cups, these little cups filled with peanut butter and chocolate, right? And he would buy like enough of them for the days that he was going to be there or wanted to be there. And then he would put them on someplace like a mantle or something like that, and then he would eat one a day, and when the last one was gone, he would leave. Okay? So my friend goes to interview him, and he starts interviewing him, and about 5 minutes into the interview, Dali says, "Wait a minute, I have to go do something. I'll be right back." And he leaves, and about a half hour later, he comes back. So Earl starts to interview him again, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, he says, "Wait a minute, I got to do something, and I'll be back in just a moment." And he leaves and comes back about 20 minutes later. This goes on about 3 times, 4 times. Earl is getting pissed because it's very hard to do an interview where somebody starts it and then he stops it after 5 minutes and then starts it again, right? So finally, after about the 5th time this happened, Dali leaves the room and he looks around the room, and there's a fireplace, and there's a mantle on the fireplace. And sure enough, there are some of these chocolates, these little peanut butter cups on the mantle.
I eat them.
So he remembered the story that he had been told. So he went over to the mantle and ate all the peanut butter cups. He checked the next day. Dali left town that day.
Hey, now your friend McCann,
Chuck McCann. Away. Yeah, I forgot to mention that actually.
Was he Officer Joe Bolton?
No.
Chuck McCann passed away?
Yeah, Chuck McCann passed away.
Oh,
yeah.
What shows did Chuck McCann have when I was a kid?
He used to show on Sunday morning on Channel 11 with Laurel and Hardy. It was a show called Let's Have Fun.
Let's Have Fun. Yeah.
He used to do Saturday cartoons, and not cartoons. He would show Laurel and Hardy shorts, and he always had the 2 puppets of Laurel and Hardy, and he did both voices.
Well, who was Officer Joe Bolton?
That was the Three Stooges.
Oh, but who was the guy that announced?
That's Joe Bolton.
Yeah, Joe Bolton.
Oh, is that really his name? I thought it
Yes.
was Chuck.
No.
He wasn't a policeman, but he was Joe Bolton.
Yeah. See, I always watch the cop shows.
Sometime I should. I've told the story before, and it's too long to tell now. But Chuck McCann told me a story once about he was working at. I'll tell you the story. He was working at WPIX, right? Mm-hmm. And they had this Saturday night show, and it was this guy. It was, I don't know, something like the rotisserie movie or something. He had this rotisserie, and he would bring it out, and he'd put some meat on there, and as the movie was going on, they'd go back to the meat and see how it was doing, and by the end of the movie, you had yourself a lovely roast beef, right? So the guy starts his show, and he's got a lovely roast beef here, and he puts it in the rotisserie, and it spins around, and you come back, and it's getting better and juicier, and finally by the end of just before the last what's the last break, but before the movie is over, he says, and look, we have a lovely roast beef. Look, and he cuts into it. He says, isn't that juicy and wonderful? And then he leaves, because he doesn't have to be there for the rest of the movie, and he leaves. Now, there's one thing that most people don't know in television, but anybody I tell this story to knows it, who is in television knows this is fact, that most crews, your stagehands, your gaffers, your stage directors, your whatever, will eat anything. Right. Okay, and they see this thing rotating on a rotisserie for 2 hours, and when it's over with, they grab the thing and they eat it like crazy. Something they forgot, however, was that the 2 weeks before, this guy had gone out and bought the meat for future shows and put it in a refrigerator on the set, which after the show was over, they would unplug and put in the prop room. And what he was cooking was this rancid, you couldn't tell on television, right, in black and white. It wasn't turning green. And he's halfway through the George Washington, through the Lincoln Tunnel. And in those days, you could do a U-turn. He goes, oh, my God, the crew. And he turns around, does a U-turn in the Lincoln Tunnel, goes back to WPIX. He's pulling up, and there's an ambulance. And they're hauling guys into the ambulance who are then looking at him going, you son of a bitch. Yeah.
At the police
that was one of the stories McCann told me. That and one other quick story. They have an announce booth, and there's an announcer waiting to announce, right? And they also had another show going on where they were recording this kid show, and the kid show had a beehive and a German Shepherd, and the German Shepherd knocks over the beehive. And all the beats head for the first place so that they can go and get out of the studio, and that's into a vent, which winds up in the announce booth. And the announcer's doing the station break, and the fucking bees attack. So those were the stories I like to hear from Chuck.
He's eating biscuits and honey in there too, right?
Yeah.
At the police department, cops like donuts.
Yeah.
And
Really?
citizens would come by with cakes and donuts and things like that, and they would leave them for the cops in the lineup room. No cop would ever eat any of those things, because that somebody could have put rat poison in it, or X-Lax or something.
Yeah.
And if you eat, so nobody would touch those things. And there you got all these cops that would eat a donut off the ground, but they would eat those.
But there's no punchline to this story.
No, that's it.
Not like I was telling. Anyway, these were a couple of stories that Chuck McCann told me, and I was good friends with Chuck for quite a while. He used to have his own screening room at his home. He was one of these guys, when the days when you weren't supposed to have these movies, we were watching a 35 millimeter print of Ben-Hur in his little theater that he had. He even had a popcorn machine. But But he was a nice guy, really nice guy, and he was a good friend for quite a while. And then you lose, I went out to California, you lose track of people. And then I got caught up with him on Facebook a couple of years ago, and we said hi, and gee, sometime you got to come on the show, and it never happened, and now he's dead, and it's never going to happen. So
How did you meet Chuck?
Through Earl Dowd. I got to be friends with Earl Dowd,
Okay.
who did The First Family, and he was good friends with Chuck, and and that's how I met Gene Shepard. Gene Shepard would come over to Earl's house for dinner, and I'd be at the dinner, and there was Gene Shepard telling one of his stories, and then I'd get bored, and I'd go into the living room, turn on the TV set, and Joe Franklin was on, and there was Gene Shepard telling him the same story. It was...
Gene Shepard used to put us to sleep as kids. Have under the cover.
Yeah, I know.
Gene Shepard.
I know. You know what's funny about it all? I'm friends with Chuck McCann. I'm friends with Gene Shepard, right? These are people who are all legendary to people in New York. And because I wasn't raised in New York, I didn't care. I just knew these guys as guys and liked them, I mean, why is this guy telling stories at dinner? Oh, well, it's Gene Shepard, he's telling all these stories. Then you'd go up the road, and you didn't know whether to go left or whether to go right, so you made it, and whatever. These are guys who were legends, and I didn't realize the legendary nature of them because I didn't grow up with it. If I had, I would have been sitting there gobsmacked just being in the presence of these guys,
Yeah.
Jeff?
Chuck McCann is like my childhood. Him, Joe Bolton, Jack McCarthy,
Fox.
Yeah, right. Anyway, Jeff had his hand up.
Gene Shepard. He was on radio all the time.
Yeah.
But also,
but for people who don't know who I'm talking about, he's the voice in A Christmas Story, and he's the guy who wrote A Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he also had a Saturday night show in the Village, and he would perform, and he would tell you one of his stories or three of them or whatever. And he was a great. He
was a great story. It was a great storyteller, and proof of that is the narration in A Christmas Story, which is Gene Shepard.
Right.
What's Zachary right? Zachary wrote some.
I work with Zach. Zach was. I was close with Zach
what was
too.
It he wrote? It was a Halloween thing, or he wrote something that was.
I don't know. He was just fun. He was fun.
Hey,
anyway,
Alex?
Yeah, we're running out of time. What, Tim?
Well, I just want to say they needed friends like you. That was good.
They needed friends like me?
Yeah, that weren't gobsmacked. I think that was good for them.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, listen, that's it for tonight. Wow.
Great show, Alex. Great show.
Great. Yeah, it was. And we'll have part 2 next week of my interview with Jack Garfein. And then the following week after that, you can't miss that one, folks. And then we'll put the whole thing up as a hour and 50-minute interview on YouTube when we're through with it. Anyway, hey, listen, thanks to Jack Garfein for being here tonight. Let's thank Phil for sending me a computer. Thanks to Jeff Stein. Always love having you here. Rob, glad we got you out of bed tonight, my friend. John Perulis, thank you, as well as Kevin, and of course, Tim. You know what the rest of you can do, guys? You can give everybody a big wave goodbye, okay? Yeah, isn't that nice? Okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm Alex Bennett. That's it for tonight. We'll be here again tomorrow night. Yeah, I got to do it again tomorrow night. It's still long. Same time. But next is the Intersection with Jack and Amy. That's followed by a wonderful show called Connections at 1 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Time. And tomorrow night, Damien will be here at 9:30 with The Exchange. And then at 10 o'clock, I'll be here again. Same time, same station in life. And in the meantime, as always, if you see her, tell her I love her, okay? Bye.